some other games coming up this weekend in the National Football League. Games and storylines that interest me with betting angles attached. How about the 1-0 Cincinnati Bengals hosting the 1-0 Jacksonville Jaguars? Current point spread of this game is Cincy in between a 3 and 3.5 point home favorite. The number at BetMGM is 3.5, but it is juiced way towards Jacksonville that you would think that maybe this drops down to 3. The total is sitting at 49. And both teams come into this game with like a fairly clean bill of health. The Bengals placed one of their offensive guards, Lucas Patrick, on IR, but they signed Dalton Reisner at the end of the offseason, as training camp was winding down, preseason winding down. And now Reisner steps into the starting lineup. That proved to be a pretty prescient signing by the Cincinnati Bengals. Not that Reisner is Steve Hutchinson, but he's someone who's played a lot of NFL football, at least like a league average or like slightly below average player. So Dalton Reisner replacing Lucas Patrick. And both of these teams won last week. But I think that there are holes that you can poke in both of them following that win. Obviously, the Bengals offense, in a stat that has been repeated a lot, 7 yards of total offense in the second half against the Browns, which is totally unacceptable when you employ Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. And while the Jaguars dominated the Carolina Panthers, there's no question about that, and I loved the Jaguars coming into the year, and like the Jaguars in the game, and we took the Jaguars in Survivor. Trevor Lawrence is underwhelming in this game. And if you notice, if you play fantasy football or you bet props, Brian Thomas basically did nothing in this game for the Jaguars. Actually scored a rushing touchdown for Jacksonville. But as far as catching the ball, there was not a lot there. And Liam Cohen was asked about that on Tuesday this week. And Cohen basically, very nicely threw Trevor Lawrence under the bus. Basically with the intimation that Brian Thomas is open on every play and we didn't get him the ball. And if you watch Brian Thomas Jr. last year, you obviously believe that. So it sets up this fascinating affair this week in the Queen City. Where do you trust the Bengals offense? Think about that question. Do you trust the Bengals offense to score enough points if this line's bad? And here's Josh Hines-Allen, and here's Travon Walker, and this Jaguars defensive front. Do you trust Trevor Lawrence to potentially go score for score with Joe Burrow? And if the game's close at the end, do you have faith that Trevor Lawrence can outduel Joe Burrow in that late game scenario and situation? Where I stand on this game, I want this point spread to drop to 3, and I want to bet the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm Mr. Jacksonville Jaguar this season. It's not an anti-Jaguar thing. I love the Jaguars this year. At 3.5, it's no bet for me. At 3, I find it very hard to believe that we are going to see the Bengals offense lay a Humpty Dumpty-sized egg this week like it did last week against Cleveland, which is a defense that's got better players, objectively, than Jacksonville, and a team and a defense and a coordinator that has generally caused Joe Burrow to struggle. I think we get a Bengals offensive breakout here. And maybe the Jaguars can score enough to keep up, but if it's close late, just like the national championship game, LSU and Clemson, give me Joe Burrow, and this time, the Cincinnati Bengals.